Hello, welcome to CIS 137, Class 15. In this class, we're going to focus mostly on the Project Part 3 review, going over a possible solution for that, and then we'll be talking about Project Part 4. Remember, there's only 5 parts to the project, so we're over the hump. Of course, Project Part 3. So for this, display the current temperature on your site, and for 15 bonus points, update the temperature every minute. So let's go ahead and do this. The first thing we need to do is get a key from openweathermap.org. I already signed up for it. Oh, shoot. And my API keys are inside of here. I'm going to pull it down here. Or, yeah, I can show you guys. It's fine. And there's my API key. So it's in this list. You can create new keys inside of here. And that way you can delete them, edit them, however you want to do it. So if your key gets leaked for some reason, you can delete it and create a new one. So we're going to go ahead and copy the key. And we're going to use that later. So we're going to use that later to test out getting the temperature from the REST API. So first thing we're going to do on this API is we're going to test if our key works. Now, if you just created your key, you have to wait 10 minutes to an hour for it to actually work. But once you get it, you can go down here and see how to use API key in a call. Activation API is for free, it takes 10 minutes. And then a call just looks like this. So you put your API key at the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the API key in, and then paste all of this in. I press enter. And here we can see, just by doing that, we can get all the REST data from the service. If we left off the API key or had an invalid API key, then we get a message like this. The 401 status rejected. So the next part is to store the key in a .env file. So we don't have to do that necessarily in order. We'll put that in later. I'm going to show you a different way first. And to figure out more about env files, you go here. And we'll talk about environment variables. So the most important part is that your environment variable must start with react underscore app underscore. So it'll look like something like this. React app secret code equals 123. Just look back over here. So we don't want to do a forecast by ID. We want to do the forecast by zip code. So that example was by a city ID, but we're going to go ahead and get the zip code. And if you look here, go to the API doc for the current weather data, you see there's by city name, by city ID, by coordinates, and then by zip code. So we could take this, and we can put our zip code in here, 21157, or whatever zip code you wanted. We see if we just try to run that without the API key, we get a 401 message, which means it's forbidden access. So we have to put our app ID equals, and then our API key. Again, if we take this, this is all pretty condensed. So we can go to JSON pretty print, paste it in here, and see the structure. And our temperature is right in here. So it's inside of main temp. There's other information in here. It tells you the exact coordinates. It tells you the weather. It's cloudy. Wind speed. Even tells you the name of the where the zip code is. And it's code 200 down here. 200 is a success response code. So 400s are all failures, bad request type codes, and 200 is success. So we just investigated the response and found the temperature in there, and it's around 300. All right, so let's throw this all together. So here I have the end of project part 2 set up in here. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to check if we have this already. Nope. Is set up the ability to do a REST call. On this class, we're using super agent to do that. I'm going to go ahead and add super agent. By the way, if you're getting a message about yarn being out of date, I can give you a simple command for that too. 1 second. Just let this finish. I can show you in the next window. So if your yarn is complaining about being out of date, you can do npm i-g yarn. That'll update yarn for you. So it says npm install globally yarn. And install will find that yarn's already installed, but it will update it to the latest package. There we go. Now super agent is inside of our package.json file, so it's good to go. A good place to put our REST calls is in component did mount. So we're going to create a component did mount method, and we're going to do our super agent call in here. But we have to import super agent first. I'm going to name the super agent requests. I could just leave it as super agent if we wanted. But the common convention with super agent is just call it request. Request get. We're going to pass it exactly the URL I was just using. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm totally messing this up here. We're actually going to call this, we can call it response, or we can call it RESP. It's a shorthand for response. One thing I like to do is put this on the line by itself. First thing we'll do is we'll check if there's an error, then we're just going to log that error to the console. We could do some other steps here. For our purposes, we're just going to log the error to the console using console.error. Then we're going to exit. Otherwise, you're going to process the response. Now, the response, what we find inside of the response is a bunch of. I'll show you. I'll show you what's inside the response, so you can see. So how can you enter an arrow? I just asked, how can you enter an arrow? Whenever he tries, gives you an error. So I just have equal, and then greater than sign to enter an arrow. Yeah, but it may look like it's an error on your screen if you haven't set up WebStorm preferences. So it'll be file settings if you're on Windows, or WebStorm preferences on Mac, and you'll get something that looks like this. If you go down to languages and frameworks, jump screen here, and to JavaScript, it should say the JavaScript language version is React JSX. If it's not, then you should select React JSX, and that'll make sure arrows are enabled. In addition, you should have your node library enabled, although it seems like I don't have it enabled, so it's not absolutely necessary. Okay, and I have a special font on my computer on my WebStorm that turns the arrow into one character. I set that up a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly where it is. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It might have been this. It might be Fira code. And then enable font ligatures. Let's look up Fira code real quick. Yeah, Fira code is what it is. So this is a system that will automatically combine these operators, like the triple equal operator, into 3 equal signs. So it just makes your code look a little neater. And I set that up. I downloaded the font. I installed it based on those directions on the GitHub Tonsky/Fira code, and then I set in WebStorm the preferences, editor, colors and fonts, font. Then you can set your primary font in here. So you would set it to Fira code. You enable the font ligatures, which is the ability to combine that equal sign to one character, and you'll have it set up. I recommend it. It makes your code look cooler. That's the only reason to use it. But it makes it clear that this is one operator. All right, so let's analyze this response. So first, let's just log the response to the console. I'm going to analyze this response in two ways. I'm going to log it to the console, and I'm going to set a breakpoint in here so you can see exactly exactly what the object is. Okay, server's popping up. Alright, so if I go to the console, we see there's something logged here. Yeah, let's break this out. Oh, let me do that. I want to pop out completely. There we go. Now inside this console, we can expand this response, and we see everything that's included in the response. So there's text down here that has the response. So we could parse that text as JSON manually if we wanted to. See, the status code is 200. 200 means it succeeded. If it were 400, then there was a failure somewhere. See links, headers, our requests that we sent. So we requested that to get from this URL. But then our actual response body is right here in body. So inside of body, this matches what we had in our JSON, but this is actually converted to a JavaScript object now, so we can access the JSON like a normal JavaScript object. So we see the clouds are in here again. The weather node is in here where it says there's few clouds. And inside of main, we have our humidity, pressure, temperature, temp max, temp min. So this is how we have to access our main. We have to go to the response body main temp. So I told you we're going to look at it two ways. So the second way you can look at it is by going through the debug process. So the debug process involves installing this JetBrains IDE support inside of your extensions. So with Chrome, you can do you can find extensions. And there's a way to get to the install extensions. Easiest way is just to type it in here. Okay. Chrome Web Store. Then you just look for JetBrains. And you install JetBrains IDE support. So if all seems familiar, it should. This is pretty much a review of what we past few weeks. Okay, so we're going to add the JavaScript debug by going to plus up here and hitting JavaScript debug here. And we can just say JavaScript debug. It can be whatever we want here. And we'll put in we'll click on here for the remote URLs, and we will put in our URL here, which was HTTP localhost 7070. So now when we want to debug, we can set breakpoints. So I'm going to set breakpoint here and press this debug button. It's still running. Oh, sorry. It's localhost 3000. I messed that up. Stop it. Edit. Localhost 3000. Okay, let's try it again. Debug. There we go. Now we have debug support. So if we refresh, it stops. It does a breakpoint here. It pops back over the screen. And then we get this debug menu down here. So we can look at the response and see the body inside of here. That's what we want. And then we can even test out if we can get to it. So we can add a watch. So you can press that, or you can right click here and do new watch. And this will let you inspect a variable. So you could go response.body.main.temp. See, that value is 295.97. So that's the value we want. That's how we get to it from inside of our code. So we press play to continue down here. We'll turn off that breakpoint, and then we'll add that response to the state. So this set state, we'll call this temperature. Response.body.main.temp. Now let's display the temperature on our site. So we're just going to put it above all these routes right here. The site's not going to be pretty. That's okay. Let's access it like this. With curly braces inside of our JSX, and we will access the state directly. Some spaces here. You can put prefix in here. You see the temperature is 295.97. So if we press refresh, it's not there, then it's there. So after the component mounts, it'll fill in that value for us. We could initialize the temperature here. Zero. If we did something like that, and every time we refresh, it'll say it's 0 degrees Kelvin at first, and then it'll pop in. I'm just going to leave it blank. So, all right, we have the temperature showing up on our site. Now we should convert it to Fahrenheit. Now, for that, I supplied a temperature converter. Let's make this full screen so I can get all the way over here. This is under CIS 137 components. There's a README here that describes how to use it. If you clone the project, then you could use yarn run storybook to see it. So for example, I have a clone project here. I think this one still works. This is the one I messed with. And go ahead and blindly revert it. We fine. Yarn run storybook. And what that does, it'll create a local host on 6006. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that so just to get this out of the way. And then you can see the temperature converter in action. So 300 Kelvin to Fahrenheit would be 80 degrees, 300 Celsius, 27. You can add a prefix in a custom class. And if you look inside the code, if you go to stories index, you can see the temperature converter in action here. So temperature converter, if you pass it 302 unit F, I made the 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperature converter Kelvin 300 to unit C would turn into Celsius. And you can add a prefix in here. And then you can add the custom class just by putting a class name directly on a temperature converter. Okay. So to import that was all supplied to npm. So you can actually do yarn add CIS 137 components. Now, to import it, you would just use import curly braces, just like the React Router DOM, temperature converter from CIS 137 components. The only thing that I wasn't able to completely fix yet is that this temperature converter shows up as gray underline cannot resolve symbol temperature converter. That has to do with how I'm building the library. I was trying to work around that, but the way Webpack was transpiling it, I couldn't quite figure it out yet to make it look like these purple links from React Router DOM. But so if that gray line was showing up, you could just ignore it. That temperature converter does exist. I think I can figure out a way to make it actually show up, but that'll be another time. So let's use the temperature converter. The temperature converter just expects the Kelvin degrees. And to pass Kelvin, we're just going to pass that, this dot state dot temperature, and then we're going to supply unit to unit equals F. If we want this temperature prefix still, we can set the prefix as well. Just go back to here, and we get some problems here. And this is saying that throw if missing on CIS 137 components. We can go into there and see exactly where it is. My problem is it's not mapped up right. Well, basically, I was hoping this was going to be more descriptive, but it's not as descriptive as I was hoping. Yeah, it's not great. So what this is saying is that this Kelvin is required to, or the temperature is required to be there. But we can set the temperature to null up here. So I should have made that error message more user-friendly. If that's confusing you at any point, sorry about that. But here we see our temperature converter and then that regular temperature text we had. We can separate these into separate lines by adding a break. A temperature converter is a inline element, so therefore when we use it with this other temperature, they get condensed down to one line. So I added this explicit break in between them, and now they're on separate lines. All right, so now we're using our temperature converter. A little bit better message. Oh, temperature. Okay, and the next part is we have to put this API key into a .env file instead of having it up here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to extract it out of this string just to see what that would look like. So I just copied that, and then I'm going to create a local variable here. And set it to the string of our API key. And then I'm going to replace API key here with $ curly brace app key. If I just do that, it all looks green here still. This is not template literal because it needs to be surrounded by backticks, and I just have the apostrophes here. So if I replace this with backtick, that's the key in the top left of your keyboard. You'll see the syntax highlighting shows that this is a template variable. Go ahead and save that and see if it still works. Current temperature is still 73 degrees, so it works. So next piece is to actually extract this out into the env file. So we don't have a .env file to start with, so we have to create one. New file, .env. And we'll take this value here. Excuse me. And we'll do a React app weather key. Paste it there. Remember, it must start with React app for it to get automatically imported into React. Now what we need to do here is instead of using this value, we could do process.env.react app weather key. Now we save this and we go back to our site. No problem here. The current temperature is negative 460 degrees Fahrenheit. That doesn't sound right. So let's look if we can find a problem. So when I pull up the console, we see failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 401 unauthorized. So that 401 unauthorized means that the weather API over here was not able to find our app key. So therefore, it just rejected us, saying we're not authorized to access the site. If we look over on this URL over here, we actually see the app ID is set to undefined. Undefined is the default value for JavaScript variables. So this app key is not getting set. The reason that's happening is because the env environment variables are set when yarn start is called. So since yarn was already running, our environment variables still had blank values. So we just have to stop yarn down here. We can either hit the stop button here, we can press Control C, and then we can start it back up. Now we see our 73 degrees is back. So it worked. Give her this down here. Give her the Kelvin temperature. And let's see if we've met all the requirements. So we used temperature converter. We displayed current temperature, 15 bonus points, updates temperature every minute. So we can do that real quick. And then I'm going to show you one step farther. And then we'll move on. So in order to update the temperature every minute, we have to use the set interval method. Now it's easiest to use set interval with just a function name. So we're going to turn this into a function. So there's two ways we can do it. We can either use the power of our IDE and go to refactor, extract method with all this selected, and we can set it to the class level scope. I'm going to say something like update temperature. And we're passing the app key. We don't need to do that. We can put the app key in here. This could be our update temperature method. So it takes no parameters, no arguments, and it does the request and it updates the state. Now, if we set interval, we can put the function call inside of here. There's this dot update temperature. You can put the function in there. We're not going to put parentheses after it because we're not going to call it now. The set interval will call it, and then we'll just set it to 60 seconds. But we're actually specifying milliseconds here, so we have to multiply this number by 1,000 for 60 seconds. Now, if we have to call this update temperature at the end here too, because set interval only starts calling this method after 60 seconds. So our temperature would be negative 460 degrees until 1 minute in. Then the actual update will be called, and the temperature updates 73 degrees. But if we have this update temperature in here, then the temperature is updated immediately. So that's how you do. That's the 15 bonus points right there. Is this right here? So your set interval, you have this dot update temperature, 60 seconds, and then you have to call update temperature outside of the set interval to actually update the temperature for the first time. Now another step further is to turn this into a component. And one student did this, and I thought it was very awesome that they did that. The way you would do that is you would create a new component with JavaScript, and it could be called thermometer. We'll still have the component with React. Now this component is going to have the temperature state inside of it, so it's going to have to be a full class component. We'll go ahead and copy this part up here, and then we'll copy the temperature converter over, and we'll actually pull over request as well. Class thermometer extends component as our first line. And we can create the constructor constructor props, call super props first, always, and then it sets the default state. Set to null. And then we're going to do this component did mount here. Component did mount, we're going to copy over the update temperature as well. These are occurring at the class level. It's the same level as constructor. One tab in. We have the update temperature here. Process.env React app weather keys still available inside thermometer. So don't worry about that. And then we can grab this render down here. So we need a render method inside our thermometer. And all it's going to do is return temperature converter. Now we can use, instead of having the temperature down here, temperature converter, we can just add a thermometer. First, we have to import it. So we can say import thermometer, there we go, / thermometer. And that's a good point. So we never did a export. So if you look at app.js at the very end, it says export default app. That's a good thing to follow. We need to export default thermometer. Whatever the name of our class is, we need to export it from our file. So now we're going to rip out the pieces in here. We're going to rip out the request, rip out this temperature here. And we could have checked first, but we're just going to rip it out right now. So it simplifies our app, and just has the logic related to temperature inside a thermometer component. So when we go in here, it still says the current temperature is 73 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's inside of our thermometer component. So that makes our thermometer reusable. We could drop this in another project and have an automatic thermometer. All right, so that's project part 3. Oh, and then at the end, yeah, what you would do is hit commit AM project part 3 completed. Then you can push it up to your repository. Oh, I don't have a repository set on this origin. That's fine. All right, so let's talk about project part 4. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Again, I think today's an allergy day because of the rain yesterday. Okay. So in course project part 4, you'll use Bulma to lay out your site. You'll use some Bulma elements, and you'll embed a YouTube video via a component that you'll create. So for using Bulma to lay out your site, you have to use a hero, you have to use a section, a footer, and you must use columns somewhere in your site. So if you go to each of these links, You see hero makes an imposing hero banner to showcase something, and this is the code to create a hero. So instead of using section, you could use header here. It doesn't matter what tag you use. What matters is you have a class equals hero, and then hero body inside of it. And optionally, you can have a container inside of that, but you need the title and subtitle as well. Now you can modify this hero to have a different background. You can make it bigger, or you can make it large, or even full height. And you can see this hero down here has some navigation inside of it as well. So there's several navigation inside of the heroes to show that off on there. I must use section as well. Section is pretty simple. It just basically adds spacing on the top and the bottom of the element. So it just adds a default amount of space. So basically, under your hero, you could have a section with class section that has your content. You should also have a footer at the bottom of your page. Footer class equals footer, and you can put some content in there, maybe a copyright or about us link. This is a small footer. I also had on there that you need to have columns. So if you go to the grid columns section, to add columns, you just do div class columns, and then for each column, you do div class column. And this will automatically create equal columns for you with however many columns you have. But you could make it so that one column, is bigger than the rest. For example, if you wanted a left-hand navigation, you could have is 1/4 on the left column, and then just leave the other one as a default column, and it'll take up the rest of the space. So you shouldn't have to deal with all of these down here unless you have a specific site need for it. But these basically are replacing Flexbox. This is an easier way to use Flexbox. So you'll also have to use bulb elements. So by the way, when you're doing all this, make sure it looks good with mobile too. So this isn't explicitly on here, but that will be considered with your score. Is if you can lay out your site in such a way that it'll be okay, at least on mobile as well. So being okay means that all the content is accessible on mobile. So when you scroll, you can find all the content. And you shouldn't have to scroll from left to right at all. It should just be top-down scrolling on mobile. So the Bulma elements you'll be required to use are title and box. So title we just saw, you can just put that in your header. Title just looks like this. You can change the size of the title. So when you use H1, you still have to say class equals title, H2 class equals subtitle, and then you can change the size by setting title is 1, title is 2, or subtitle is 1, subtitle is 2, so on and so forth. Another element you need to use is the box. So this gives you a pretty box around whatever content you want. That has a shadow, a border, a radius, and some padding. This is a good place to put your staff bio cards or your event cards. It can be done in a box. Here's an example of how to use it. You can see the boxes all the way up here. And then it put all this content inside of that box. Right? I mean, you can have whatever content you want inside this box, and it'll make it look like this. So the only elements you're required to use, you can use more of them just stick to title and box for full points on those. And last, not least, is embedding a YouTube video via component. So with this, it's basically something we did last class, is create a reusable component to embed a YouTube video. So reusable component, that means you need to expose certain properties. To make that component, you could drop it in another project, maybe with a different video or different size requirements, or maybe with autoplay. It has to have props exposed to be able to uh, set the properties you want for that particular site. So that's the first part. And then the second part is to actually embed at least one YouTube video on your site using your reusable component. So I forgot to put a due date on here. Let's actually put a due date on. So this is going to be due. I'm pulling up the calendar. I know it's due August 4th. So let's do that. 2/8/4 at 8 a.m. Now, class, of course, for our semester is August 11th. On August 11th, part 5 is due. Part 5 will be appropriate for the week. Amount of time you have, and that will have to do with actually deploying your site to a live host, so you can access it from. So again, project's due on August 4th, Friday, August 4th by 8 a.m., which is about 2 weeks from now. This next Friday. So if you have any questions, please hit me up on Slack or YouTube. Leave a comment. Either way works. And if you have my email, you can email me. But I prefer Slack if you got it. All right. I hope you all have a good day, and I'll see you all next class. Oh wait, where's my mic garbled? What did you hear, Josh? Is there heard the due date? Well, hit me up on Slack if you. Okay. Sorry if you didn't hear when it was due. It's actually, it's due Friday, August 4th. And project part 5 will be due August 11th. And we'll talk about project part 5 at some point next week. All right. I'll see you all on Wednesday. Thanks for joining.